biting. The paralytic form, patient isn't hyperactive, that they're paralyzed and disoriented and in a stupor. This is a common form if a cat gets it. In humans, it could be misdiagnosed as Guillain-Barré syndrome. Because of the paralysis, and it might be fatal. Both the furious and paralytic forms lead to coma and death within days. So to diagnose it, if the patient's alive, you can do immunofluorescence studies for viral antigen in the, in saliva and serum or in the cerebral spinal fluid. After somebody has died, though, they do microscopic studies of the brain, and then the tissues show the neuron cells with inclusions in them called Negre bodies, and you have a picture of that in your book as well. Also, you can run fluorescent antibody tests on the brain tissue. Yeah, they have, like bats are one thing that they always worried about rabies with. And my daughter lives in North Carolina, and she has a family of bats living in her garage. I cannot believe that she leaves them living there. Yeah.
Do they bother her?
No, but when I think of bats, I think of this.
Well, I heard that sometimes they can bite you in your sleep and you won't feel it for a week. But if you bat bites you, you should trap it and take it to get the before.
Yeah, even if, that's why they quarantine, if you get a dog bite, and they quarantine that dog for so long because they're checking to see if that dog has rabies or not. So yes, anything that bites you that's suspicious, you should, yeah. So if you have contact with an animal that you think has rabies, patients are given a series of anti-rabies vaccines and human rabies immune globulin injections.
Do you know what location they give those vaccines?
Huh?
Do you know where they get the vaccines?
This is if, I don't know if they give the vaccine to humans other than if they come down with this, because it grows, from the time you get it.
Because when I was little, Doug bit my brother and I and had rabies, and they give us
You had rabies?
No, a dog bite us, and they had so they give us a bunch of vaccines around the navel, like 10 of them. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I remember they used to give them
Yeah,
in
when
the
we were
stomach.
little,
Did they hurt?
Well, I don't remember. I remember the dog, the situation.
Yeah.
Because it was all my brother's fault. Because he tried to pet the dog and then bit my brother, and as he was walking away, bit me.
Oh.
So they took us to the doctor and they gave us like a bunch of
Do you need
vaccines.
booster shots for these?
Pardon?
Like, do you need booster shots if you get bitten again?
I don't know that they give people unless they've been bitten.
Yeah. What if you got bitten a second time?
From animals.
Yeah.
That's a good one.
Did they determine that the dog that bit you had rabies before they?
Oh yeah.
Well,
they
they yes, but sometimes, if the dog wasn't there, they used to initiate those things anyway, just to be on the safe side.
Because over there, the sign is that it has the saliva like all around and the foam around the
Foam
mouth.
on, yeah.
But the injections are
Yeah.
immunoglobulins. It's not the vaccine. It's
No, that's one thing that they would give you is the immune globulin to help your own immune system against this. But they also give the anti-rabies vaccine.
and now they put it in the back for the
anymore.
Yeah, I didn't think they put it in the
Ow.
stomach anymore.
Oh yeah, I mean that was like 27 years ago or so.
Now what they're doing is they put, and you might have heard about, this, one of the, girl back east that had this, they put her in an induced coma, and she lived then, you know, cause they can do all this treatment to them and it slows things down. If they're in a coma, your body isn't, you know, metabolizing things quickly. And, she lived, so that's, it seems to be the new thing that they're doing, cause then I heard of somebody else that got rabies that they put in the induced coma as well. And yet they can give you these, antibodies and vaccines while you're in it. Otherwise, it was a pretty high, it was almost 100% mortality rate if you actually came down with it. So how can we prevent it? They have that, you know, that dogs have to have rabies shot. I don't think cats need them though. They don't make that mandatory for cats, but they do for dogs. And then there's a program where they go out and vaccinate wild animals as well. There's about 7,000 to 8,000 cases of animal rabies per year in the U.S. and about 1 to 6 human cases a year. So you can see it. Arbovirus encephalitis. Arbo is short for, when we say arbovirus, arbo is short for arthropod borne. So that means that this virus is coming to you from some sort of arthropod. So most of them are mosquito borne, so it's a mosquito that's carrying that. They cause encephalitis, which is acute inflammation of the brain. And they are caused by a series, arboviruses are a bunch of different viruses that can cause encephalitis, and they're RNA viruses. So symptoms are common to, depending on which virus it is, and the symptoms would be for that particular type. But in general, there's chills, severe headache, a sudden very high fever, and it can progress to mental confusion, coma, and death. So there's many forms of the disease and many vectors that carry these arboviruses. And we have one of these here in California. And it kills somebody every year. Okay, so here's a few of them. There's Western equine means horse encephalitis. We have it sporadically on the West Coast. And then there's Eastern equine encephalitis, and that's endemic. They have it at a certain level always in the East Coast. And there's St. Louis encephalitis, that's the most common form. And then there's West Nile virus. And that's considered an emerging disease. And this one's related to St. Louis encephalitis. And we didn't used to have West Nile virus here. Birds are the natural reservoirs of the virus, and they spread the virus during their annual migration. Mosquitoes transmit the viruses among birds to small animals. So Western and Eastern equine encephalitis not only affects horses, but it infects humans as well. Arboviruses can overwinter in hibernating mosquitoes or in their eggs. And West Nile virus was first reported in the United States in 1999. Prior to that, it wasn't here, over in Africa. But now things, with the advent of the airplane and people moving around, everything can come. here in California, you hear about it every year, and usually somebody dies from it here in California. Most cases are mild, but you can get a polio-like paralysis and encephalitis, and that can cause death. And they say, especially in the elderly, but here in California, there's elderly people that get it, but there's also people in their 30s. A couple of years ago, or last year, one man that died was only in his 30s here in California. A diagnosis is made through serological tests such as the ELISA test, identify the IgM antibodies, and prevention is control of local mosquitoes. And where I live in Orange County, they have a really good mosquito abatement program, and you never see any mosquitoes. Although they say there's some there now that can carry that yellow fever virus. Fungal diseases of the nervous system, cryptococcus, it's a disease, or cryptococcosis. The pathogen is Cryptococcus neoformans. It's got a capsule, it's an encapsulated yeast-like fungi, and it is transmitted. Transmission is associated with inhaling dried yeast cells. And usually in the urban areas, we're talking about from pigeon droppings, but it can also be in chicken droppings as well. Initial infection is in the lungs, and it's usually subclinical and resolves rapidly, so your body should take care of it. But if you have an immunocompromised system, then this fungi is a opportunistic pathogen. So it is a problem for people that have AIDS or on steroid treatment. It can spread to the blood and then to the brain and the meninges and cause a chronic meningitis. And then that meningitis can be progressive and fatal if it's left untreated. Diagnosis is the latex agglutination test. And it's to detect the cryptococcal antigens in serum or cerebrospinal fluid. Treatment is a cocktail of amphotericin B plus flucytosine. And even though they get treated, there's still a 30% mortality rate. So here's how the yeast cell looks out in the environment. You can see it has a capsule around it, but it's just a tight, weak capsule. And it needs to be small like that so that when you inhale it, it can get into your alveolar spaces that are in your lungs. So it has to be small. Once it gets in the lungs, it gets rehydrated, and then that capsule grows into this big capsule that you see there. Here's a picture of that yeast, and it's multiplying. This is how the yeast divide, is they can make buds, just a little bud forms, and it eventually pinches off from the main yeast cell and becomes a new yeast cell.